Now we are ready for our next guest, Andrea from Coladon, who will deliver his speech, Brand Intelligence in the Era of Big Data.
Thank you for the invitation. I found Warsaw a beautiful city. And thank you to the guys of the panel. They did a remarkable job about speaking about AI. So I think they told you almost everything. You can basically skip my talk. Okay, so I think I'm here to start talking about the magic of words. What I learned some time ago is that words were originally magic, in the sense that when the language developed, the first people that were using words, they were very important. They were paying a lot of attention to the words that we're using. They were sorcerers or wizards. They were making spells with words, and they were talking to gods first, then interacting with humans. So that is really important, because in the words, we have a lot of information, and words kept their magical power in nowadays. There is a book, it's an amazing book, it's called Change by Paul Václavic, and it's a book that tells you that by the way you use words, you can change people's behavior. So all this stuff came to my experience at some point, but I really understood the magic of words. Do I have a clicker or something to send my slides on? Maybe. Should I say next, or can you give me something? Okay. So you will see a picture shortly, but what really taught me the magic of words, it's a story that a colleague of mine once told me, and it's the story of a blind man. I think it's a true story. It was very effective. It's this story of the blind man. He is outside of a big mall, and he has a label to ask for money, because of course he is blind, he cannot see, it's difficult to find a job. So he is asking, please, I cannot see, help me with some offer. So there is this guy, he works in advertising, he goes to the mall, he sees the man, he reads the label, and he says, okay, I should really contribute to help him. Maybe he has empathy, like we learned this morning, okay? So he gives the coins to the man, but then he puts the hand on his pocket and he says, I have no coins, so I go to the mall, I do some shopping, and then with the change that I have, I will help the man. This is what he did. He stays in the mall for like 2 hours, and then he comes back with like 2 or 3 euros change, and he wants to give them to the man. But then he saw that the basket of the man was still empty as 2 hours before. So what he thinks is that I can give him even 5 euros now, but I'm not solving his problem. So he will still have the problem of raising more money. What is wrong? So I'm a marketing guy. I can look at this man and study the problem. So he sits in front of the man for like 20 minutes, and he starts guessing. Maybe it's a marketing distribution problem. So the man is wrongly positioned, and there is dark where he's positioned, or people are just passing by and they don't see the label, they don't read, please help me because I cannot see. No, that wasn't the problem, because many people were passing by and they were seeing the man, and they were just not touched by the message that product was sending to the audience. So he goes back to the mall. He uses the 5 euros to buy a big blue marker, and he comes back to the man, and what he does, he turns the label on the other side, and he writes on the label, today is the first day of spring, and I cannot see it. Then he sits on the wall, he waits 20 minutes, and the basket is full. Because that magic, that message, that words could change people's behavior. So they were not just passing by, they were stopping and giving offers. So from what I learned, I say, okay, we need to translate this information into business-related metrics. We need to invent something that it's good for leveraging the power of big data and assessing the strength, the importance of brands. So this is what I'm going to present, the Semantic Brand Score, which is a new metric that can be applied to any sort of textual data to measure the importance of your company with respect to competitors. But we will approach the concept of brands in a very broad way, in the sense that by brands, we can mean the name of a politician, the name of a political party. It's not just Pepsi against Coke. It can also be a broader concept, like if you want to measure how core values of your companies are really diffusing within the values of your employees. So when we do social media analytics, I do social network analysis, which is in a sense very different, but people think that when I say social network analysis, I do social media analytics. So when many companies do that, they say, okay, I'm gonna measure the sentiment around your brand, and I'm gonna measure how many times your brand got mentioned in the messages, which is the first dimension of my score. It's called prevalence. You see it at the top. So it counts the frequency of your brand name. So now imagine that we all together take our phone and go on Twitter and we say, I attended Masters and Robots. So we just sent 700 people in this room, we all send this message. Does your brand, so Masters and Robots in this case, really has a value? I don't think so. Prevalence would be very high, and this is what a lot of companies are measuring, but this is not enough. So you need these other two dimensions in the analysis, diversity and connectivity. So diversity measures how rich is the bubble of words around your brand, how heterogeneous is the context when people express feelings or emotions or purchase intentions about your brand. And connectivity tells you something more. So you could have something that is frequently mentioned, that it's embedded in a deep bubble of rich discourse. But then if you take, for example, Coke or Pepsi, they might be rich in the context, but if you take all the scenario of non-alcoholic beverages, maybe they are not so much embedded at the core that they cannot connect different topics and be embedded with brokerage power in the discourse. So we need connectivity, that is the third dimension, to see, hey, within this discourse, how central am I? So I will skip on the boring and technical details about this, but we combine these metrics, and I will show you very briefly how. So this is based on well-known brand equity models. So probably you heard of Keller's model. So he says, when you measure brand equity and the value of a brand, you should look at brand awareness and brand image. So you should look at how frequently people recall the name of the brand or they recognize it. Some people also do, I give you a can of Coke and a can without a brand. What is the differential price that you are willing to pay if this is Coke? But brand recall and brand recognition, it's in what people write. So we capture it with frequency of the brand name. Prevalence, it's capturing that dimension. But still, there is the discourse of brand image. So many associations with the brand, their positivity, their negativity, their uniqueness, their strengths. So we get that through diversity and connectivity. So I'm not saying that I'm replicating Keller's model, but I'm saying that I'm doing something different based on Keller models to adapt it to the era of big data. So why am I not using, when I go to companies, why aren't we using surveys and the Keller's model anymore? Many reasons. First of all, it's costly. I go to customers, I make an interview with 800 customers, and I say, hey, this is the value of my brand because I have 800 interviews. In the era of big data, is that enough? I don't think so. And surveys were very expensive, they were time-consuming, And more than that, you have a strong bias because you know, well, people know that they are being interviewed. And so they have a bias because immediately after you know that what you are going to say is being recorded, you change your behavior, even if you don't want to. So I heard people talking about focus group because they say, hey, we put them in a room that it's designed like a mall and we see how they behave. So now I ask you, if you want to know how the lion hunts, do you go to the zoo or you go to the jungle? I would go to the jungle. So I wouldn't put people in a room and see how they behave because this room is well designed like a shop. I will go to the shop and see how they behave. I would do as Sachi and Sachi, Kevin Roberts did in the past. He said, we need exploring with the X. He said, I need to work with Pampers and I need to make the brand new napkin that will solve all the problems of napkins. How do I get the right insights? I sent hundreds of researchers in China spending 6 months with the mothers, 2 months before the birth of the kid and 3 months after or something like that. So the idea was just sharing the empathy, the moments that they really live. I can get the real insights that will lead me to the real products, the product that they really want, they really need. I could also anticipate some of their needs because sometimes they don't realize they have a need and I can anticipate that. So this is one of the advantages of the semantic brand score, that we do not interview people. We look at their discourse where it's normally happening. So on social media, we can look at emails. I know I'm going to scare you, but it's basically any possible textual source. So we can do it on a much larger base. We can analyze even millions or thousands of messages, and mostly we can capture their honest signals, which means subtle patterns in human interaction and communications that you are not self-aware of, but we can measure and get insight from that. And so we reduce dramatically the biases, because if I tell you, okay, I'm just going to measure your betweenness centrality or your rotating leadership in the next 2 weeks, even if you know you are being measured, probably you cannot act these metrics, okay? So this is partially what we do. How do we do it on text? So in these steps, so we collect textual data of any sort. We do some pre-processing like stemming, removal, or punctuation. We put everything in lowercase. This is really technical and boring stuff. But the real idea here is that we transform texts into networks of words based on their co-occurrences. So we can study something that is very important. It's relations among words. In classical statistics, we have vectors of numbers, and we say, you have this gene in your DNA, so you will probably develop this disease. This is often not true, because that gene needs to be activated by other factors, and so you need to study relationships among the environment and the genes and the other genes in your DNA. So here comes the power of networks. So if you look at this, Aurora is my mother. She was bright as the dawn, and yet she was mysterious and dark as the night surrounding the star. I never understood her. Okay, so I would remove the red words, because in this case, they had little meaning. We call them stop words. And with the remaining words, we do this network. And then prevalence is the frequency of appearance of a brand name. So, for example, Aurora. And then we have diversity, which, if we look at networks, it's the number of links. And connectivity is how central and what's the brokerage power of that brand. If we were doing social network analysis, I would say diversity is degree centrality and connectivity is between centrality. But this is not really important. What is important now that I present you something that maybe I'm not good at explaining, and so you might not understand it fully. But what is more important is, what's the purpose? Now that I have it, how do I use it? So I'm presenting you some application cases. One of these is, I work with Telecom Italia. It's the incumbent in the telecommunication market in Italy. At one point, they say, hey, Telecom Italia, it's very institutional, very old blend. We need to switch to something fresher. We need to change our internal values, and you are going to measure that. Okay, so they changed the brand to TIM, which is the mobile brand. They drop Telecom Italia. They start doing that, but they need to assess in people communication if their campaigns are being effective or not, if this is really working or not. And we can tell this is working because at the beginning of the process, the two brands almost have the same value, but then you can measure the trends. So it's not just qualitative that you say, okay, you succeeded, but you measure by how much you succeeded. You can do it on social media. This is, again, Telecom Italia, the blue one, Vodafone in red, and Wind in yellow. It's 2 days from Twitter. So we can do social network analysis, analyze tweets, and intuitively we understand that blend in blue, Telecom Italia, it's much more important than the others, but how much? We can measure with the 3 dimensions of prevalence, diversity, and connectivity. Or we can do positioning graphs to see what is the positioning of your brand. So on the vertical axis, we have the semantic brand score. And on the horizontal axis, we have sentiment. So we can understand how strong is your brand and how good are people speaking about your brand. Because I will reach it in the end of my presentation, but it's not just about measuring. It's about defining what we can do afterwards with what we measured. Because otherwise, we are all scientists. We are all very happy. We measured that we are better of our competitor of 10%, and now what? We need to increase that value or to keep it steady. So we need to do something. When I ask people what is the most important brand in this chart, sometimes they say Eon or Edison, because these are those that people speak better about. I say it's Enel and Eni, because they have the highest semantic brand score. And still people are speaking pretty good about. So what I found in political campaigns, it's regardless of the sentiment, the higher your score, the higher the proportion of votes that you're going to get. And with regard to textual brand associations, we can do networks because we leverage on the power of networks with this methodology, and we can study associations. So in blue, you see those associations that are common to these two brands, which is a runoff between two politicians running for the mayor of Rome. And in the green, you see what is distinguishing one from the others. So in the branding theory, you have mission, you have vision, you have values, and the brand should reflect these elements in your organizations. But then with this kind of studies, you can study relationships between concepts and words, and you can study their uniqueness. And lastly, you can have keywords. So when we give you a report or we do together this analysis, we discover things and we tell you, okay, so far you did like this. If you want to improve, this is the way you need to shape your communication for the future. So this is the good part of these analytics in my idea. I want to show you, I'm not digging into Polish politics, I promise. So I go to the Italian scenario. I did these experiments studying news, and I really found that news really have an impact on people. So imagine that they have an impact for political elections. They can also have a big impact when people decide if it's good or not to buy your product, or if what you are doing in terms of corporate social responsibility, they do care about or they don't. So I downloaded a bunch of news during political elections, and I made forecasts with this metric. And then I published this research, and the reviewer asked me, which is the complicated formula or the machine learning model, or because they know I do this kind of very complicated stuff. So what do you use to make the forecast? Because I was just presenting result. I forgot the formula because the formula was just too stupid. It's the one that you see above there. So it's the SBS of the yes intention, because this was a referendum and you can vote yes or no, divided by SBS of yes plus SBS of no. And this was stupid that at the beginning, when I tried, I said it's never going to work. But it worked, because the influence that news, especially in the week before the election, have on citizens, it's huge. And so now we have a tool to measure that. It's another application to make you go out of the box when we say the word brand, and so you don't only think about Pepsi and Coke. We did it for other scenarios. What I say is that the performance drops a little bit when it's more candidates, and it's much better when it's less. But the error, at least in these 4 cases, was always less than polls. So we were not doing interviews. We were saving a lot of money. I didn't spend a cent to download this data and analyze this data in almost real time. And I got an answer that was more accurate than polls. We are now using the metric also for tourism forecasting. So if the brand importance of your museum is changing, then also the number of visitors to your museum is changing, and this is correlated with the semantic brand score. We are doing financial forecasting, so if you want to make money or you are a VC, let's make money together after my talk. And we are doing economic forecasting. For example, the trust that people have in economy can be measured by the impact that economical news have on the population. We put all these things together in a brand intelligence app. We can discuss this later. But now I make you a question. So, in case you want to open an Italian restaurant, because Italians are all about food. What is the product or the type of Italian restaurant that you would open? What would you be selling? Pizza? Noodles? Okay, cool. This is pretty out of the box. But almost everybody said pizza, and you're right, because you see the semantic brand score of pizza in the last year in news, in English news, speaking about Italian restaurants. So pizza is definitely the main brand. Then we have pasta, second, and we have a spike of lasagna. I don't know why in June 2019. I still have to figure out. I have psychology friends here, and they will help me tell you why. Arancini, gelato, tiramisu. Gelato is one of the most profitable businesses in Italy, but not as much as abroad. So really, if you want to open an Italian restaurant here, go for pizza. So you see how these metrics can help you shape the kind of communication and marketing actions that you want to make. You can see the positioning. So not just, pizza is the most important, but probably people speak better about pasta. So this is the positioning, but they are all speaking good about these terms. You can study associations, and so if we look at associations, we can say that definitely you should have pizza with pepperoni on your menu, because this is the top product. And with pasta is all about sauces, And so what I saw doing, which was quite effective, is that when you order pasta in Italy, they come with sauce. Abroad, I saw that they were boiling pasta, and then you can put your own sauce on the pasta, sometimes doing very strange stuff. I saw even people putting fried potatoes on pasta, which was disgusting in my opinion, but if it sells, maybe it's good for your business. And much more. So yesterday I was mentoring to some startups, and so my friends, the guy who moderated the session, and Lisa, who gave the talk before, they have a lot of money. And so I thought, okay, let's look at cryptocurrencies and if you need to make investments and why people are more comfortable investing in Bitcoins than in Forex, for example, because Bitcoins are much more known and it's a more powerful brand. And you can study the power of these brands comparing dimensions. And you can decide which actions you want to take to improve your connectivity, diversity, or prevalence. So with prevalence, it's easy, because just make people talk more about your brand, or just use your press office. But with the other two dimensions, we can give suggestions, or we can exclude the main brand and compare with more direct competitors. Last thing, when I was working with, they once told me, okay, Andrea, you are the data scientist, so we got a crisis. We got 50,000 tweets about the CEO in one day, and tomorrow morning we are meeting him. So please make a qualitative analysis of these tweets and make some slides. So at 8 a.m., we can tell him what they were about. So I'm very slow at reading, and 50,000 was too much. So we can do some kind of topic modeling, and we can say which were the main discourse topics, and where is my brand. So you see the red dots there. So you can divide the discourse in bubble of words, and each bubble of words, it's representing a specific topic, and compared to the overall discourse, you can see where you are positioned and if it's okay. A friend today was suggesting we should study the shortest paths. And so if you have your brand here and you want to connect to a topic that it's really important and it's here, what is the path of words that you should use to get from a topic to the other? Or if you have something that it's very close to your brand and it's bringing you crisis, how do you break this path? How do you move your brand to another level, to another discourse? So, very, very last thing. This work, it's not just about metrics, it's about improvement. And when I want to improve, I leave you with an open reflection. So, there is not just one reality, which is our mission, our goals, but there are as many realities as the people who look at them. So, if you want to engage with your consumer, you should use a language that is appropriate for your consumer, for each of your consumer. And with this sort of analytics, you can customize the language, and you can touch the art of your consumers. I saw people doing incredible things with words. I saw people that were using a different side of my methodology or of things that I've studied to treat, for example, a paranoid. So he was coming and he was saying, I cannot undress in my house because my neighbors put cameras inside my building and they watch me when I'm naked. So if you have been going to many psychologists all around the world, and and everybody was trying to explain that their kind of reality. So cameras weren't just there. They were trying to use cognitive science to tell him about that, but it never worked. What these people did, they told him, of course there are cameras in your building. Of course you did well to go to the police and talk about your neighbors. But you are an experienced soldier. What you should do, you should use your brain to neutralize that cameras. So by well, it was longer, but in the short, buy very huge spotlights and put them against the cameras. So they will be deactivated by the light and you can safely get undressed. This is what he did. He came back and he said, I feel safer now. And they told him, no, you are not safe. They are waiting for you to turn off the lights so they can spy on you again. And this kept going till within his reality, he really understood that the cameras weren't there. And so he could change his behavior in a way that was more functional. So I'm not saying that your customers are paranoid, but I'm saying that you need to go inside the reality of your customers. You need to understand their brand image and act within to bring them to your target, to your goal, or to increase your profits, or whatever you are using the semantic brand score for. So thank you very much.